had to face a lot of life challenges. My mother was only 24 years old when she passed, and I was 6. I was really just more hurt, and sugar became like I'm gonna say it was my first drug.
So at what point did you realize that you had traumas from your childhood that you needed to heal?
I first realized it when I got into treatment.
So I want to welcome Tammi Edwards to the show. She runs a nonprofit. She does a few things. She runs a nonprofit. She also has a emotional intelligence business, I guess. You're a consultant who does some coaching with emotional intelligence. And she's also had experiences with what, mushrooms or ayahuasca? What exactly? Mushrooms?
Mushrooms first helped to heal me of some stuff that I was going through that I thought I had really conquered, but was blessed to be introduced to a sister who took me on
A journey.
three, three journeys, actually. I started in 2023 in September on my first one, had a lot of awakenings from that one, went on journeys with a couple of sisters, had some awakenings on that one, was actually healed of something
Hmm.
that was like just lodged in my body.
Okay.
And prior to the ceremony, it felt like I had something like just stuck up under one of my tonsils. And it came up just before we were going in.
Hmm.
And as a result of the ceremony, I was able to purge that out and got totally free of something. And then I had my last one like in March of 2024, and
Okay.
then went on to do ayahuasca in September of
Oh, so an
2024.
ayahuasca too. Okay, so we're gonna get into all that, but first, take me back to how you're raised, where you're from, that sort of thing.
I'm from Oakland,
The
California,
Bay
the
Area.
Bay
Oh, wait,
Area,
hey.
West Side, West Oakland, born and raised. Um, I went to all educated through the Oakland School District until like my last year of high school, where I actually finished high school in Texas. And then I came back to the Bay, had a son, I have a beautiful 35-year-old son now. And I came back, had to face a lot of life challenges, but did the work to heal and went on to college, went on to buy a house, and went on to have a great career at the city of Richmond for 25 years. And then I had another year at the city of Hercules. So I actually recently retired 3 years ago. Um,
Congratulations.
thank you. With 26 years of service at the age of 51. Instinctively, I knew that if I didn't leave at that time, that I would make it to 55 and I would be sick. So 55 is kind of like the golden number that we have where you get the max out of your retirement based on your years of service and based on how much money you make. And so at times I wonder, I know I left a lot of money on the table, but I gained so much more about myself. I was
Mhm.
able to heal. I was able to go do those ceremonies as a result of letting go of, 25 years of being in one particular place. I was now had the freedom to be free to choose the life I want to live instead of just be on this one track to doing one particular thing so that I could be comfortable financially.
And
I
that
think
really,
so much.
yeah, and I was gonna say that's really important, having that freedom, having that sort of control over your own destiny. So how are you raised? Were you raised in a religious household, or how are you raised?
So I was raised Christian until about the age of 10 when I decided that I wasn't going to church no more. I decided that because I was singing in the choir and I got a lead part in the choir, and we used to be on the radio. And this young lady came in and said, "You sounded horrible on the radio, just terrible," and just crushed my whole little spirit,
Mhm.
my whole little life.
Enthusiasm, everything.
The choir director would be looking for me, and I never went back.
Wow. So what about that made you say no to church? I mean, was just that whole you couldn't forgive her, or was just too crushing?
So I think at that time, it was just, I didn't want to go back because I just felt I was just deflated. Like I wanted
Mhm.
to sing. My mother was a singer when she was alive. And so I wanted to follow in her footsteps. And I just didn't go back. Now I did go back to church eventually when I got older. So somewhere about 1994, 95, I went back to church and and stayed there to about 97 when I started to, become awakened and learn about different things. I slowly moved away. But yeah.
What made you go back to church? Was it the fact that you had children? You kind of wanted them raised in a Bible situation, like knowing about God?
Yes, I wanted my son to be well acquainted with God.
Okay.
And I had found God again, through my trials and tribulations.
Mhm.
So that became my way of just coping with life.
But then something happened which made you more awake spiritually. What was that? Was there a catalyst? Did something happen in your life?
Yes, I went to college at age 27.
Okay.
In college, you're exposed to so many different things. So I think I
Mhm.
took Western civilization and some other type of history course that just made me realize that the Bible just had a lot of contradictions, and and I just started to become a little inquisitive at that time, and I also had um a gentleman in my life who was my aunt's boyfriend, who found this book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh.
I've read that one.
And yes, it's a wonderful, he has a series,
Okay.
wonderful book. And it opened my eyes to think about the world in a different way. I think the first thing and one thing that stands out in the book is he said, "You think Hitler went to hell?" And that's a big one. You're like, yeah, he went to hell. He killed all those people. He was like,
No,
no,
we no, we no siree.
yes, no, no, siree. And that takes a lot to digest because our
Hmm.
programming has us um conditioned to believe
Yep.
that we're going to hell.
If we
And
don't
so it
believe
took
in Jesus. Yep.
yes, and it took me so long to really digest that. I think I kept plugging along. I read the whole series.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think he kept adding books, so I just kept reading. And then eventually, slowly but surely, more people started to come into my life that matched that philosophy and opening my world up to expanding my view on religion and spirituality.
Okay. So how did that sort of hellfire um revelation, how did that change things for you? What opened the doors for you? How did that open the doors for other ideas, I guess?
Because it took the book took the pressure off of everything that I was conditioned to believe
Okay.
about heaven and hell.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I think the longest it took me was to believe that I wasn't to un encumber from believing that I was going to hell and that I was a sinner and I was going to die.
So that kind of probably blew the lid off your dome, right? You're not a sinner, you're not gonna we don't go to hell. How did you comprehend all the information that was coming at you?
Just took it in bite-sized pieces. I just continued to learn. And then people came into my life as I look back.
Mhm.
Spiritual teachers started to show up when I was ready to hear the information and to digest the information. I had a spiritual teacher who we were born on the same exact day. And so I, at first, I didn't see that, we had so much in common because she was older.
Mhm.
But one day we were talking because our friendship lasted over 11 years and I could go back through some emails. And then one day she just said, you think you this, woman who go to work and dress all nice and do all this. So she said, you a hippie and you a healer. And she just went on down based on, probably reading my astrology chart.
Mhm.
Also, we practice the system called Destiny Card. So
Mhm.
she was into that. We were into the same thing because she could see where I was going.
She probably could read into your energy a little bit too.
She was reading into my energy and
Hmm.
she had been with me so long, taking me back to childhood regressions and
Oh,
have helped me to remember, to forgive my mom for, leaving me. And so she knew me. And that day stood out for me when she called and was like, oh no, honey, you're not who you think you are. Just wait and see. And here we are.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of childhood trauma your mother left you. Could you sort of get into that story a little bit?
Yeah, my mom died when I was 6 years old,
Oh, sorry to
and
hear that.
I think I adapted a philosophy of, I'm okay, I'm all right, she gone. My mother was only 24 years old when she passed, and I was 6. So as a little kid, you just, she was kind of like not there at first. I mean, she was always in my life, but just dealing with her own stuff. So I felt neglected already, and then she
Hmm.
dies. So that was just the combination of, oh my God, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And so at that time, I gained weight. I put weight all around my body,
Hmm.
to protect myself from me, I guess, taking on her characteristics and being like her. But I really was hurt. I was really just more hurt, and sugar became like I'm gonna say it was my first drug.
Right.
And I ate a lot of it, and I don't even think my grandparents really realized that I was stuffing my emotions with sugar.
Hmm.
My grandmother did put me in therapy at the age of 6, and I did adopt a practice of being over the therapist would have me close my eyes and have me like walk across the bridge and meet my mother, and I would talk to her, and then I would come back across the bridge and come back over here and I was doing this at 6. you know
I think that's
um
called ancestral lineage healing, I think, because I just interviewed a woman who that's what she does. She takes you into a meditative state, you meet your ancestors and they help you heal.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. So it was a way for me to like stay in contact with my mom. But as I think about it now, I still was so angry at her that I remember doing the exercise, but I know as I got older, I still had a lot of work to deal with that trauma. And then not only that, I lost my grandparents at age 15 and 16. They died in a year and 2 weeks apart from each other.
Okay.
So my whole foundation
Was rocked.
was rocked.
So were you
Was
raised
rocked.
by grandparents after your mom passed?
Yes, I was raised
Okay.
by my grandparents. And then they were always there though. They were always there rescuing me. They were just there. Like
Hmm.
it was an easy transition. Another transition came when I had to move with my other set of grandparents after they died.
With your
So
dad's parents?
no, actually with my mother's father. My
Oh,
mother's father,
okay.
he married again,
Oh,
and
okay.
my grandmother, through him, they raised me from 16 until I became an adult.
Okay.
Hmm.
So then you went to college and you got some eye-opening experiences. What sort of happened after that?
Well, before that, it was a lot that happened before
Oh,
that
well, let's get
because
into it then. Sounds like there's
um,
more.
there's more. So as a result of being hurt, whew, hurt from my grandparents passing away, I started to escape.
Hmm.
So drugs became my escape pattern. And I dabbled in it a little while for when I was 16. And then I got myself together, got it together so I could graduate school and be on time, get out of school on time. And then I had to go into treatment at the age of 21 or 22 years old.
Were the
So
drugs hard or was it just more like marijuana?
no, it was hard
Oh,
drugs.
hard
It,
drugs.
yeah, it was hard drugs. It was
Gotcha.
cocaine. It was cocaine.
Okay.
So I because I had other family members who had went into recovery, and I had many role models to tell me that this wasn't the way that in the path. For the sake of my son, who was 3 at that time, I entered into treatment. I put my housing on the line. I had Section 8 at that time, put it on the line, like, don't give it back to me unless I finish the program. And that's what happened. So I finished about age 25. I actually graduated from the program. Best decision of my life. It's where I first learned about emotional intelligence
Okay.
and self-awareness and situational awareness. And I wouldn't trade it for the world because my life has been so much different as a result of choosing to be clean. So
Is that why you started college a little bit later than the
then,
traditional age?
yes,
Okay.
that's very much. I always was in and out of school, but when I got my job with the city of Richmond, I immediately went to school like 6 months after being there. Like that was just what I had to do because I wanted to be promoted. So I got into college. I did the PACE program, which was a full-time college program in addition to working full-time, and set me on my course.
So at what point did you realize that you had traumas from your childhood that you need to heal?
So I first realized it when I got into treatment, and realized that I had a lot of abandonment issues and thinking that I wasn't good enough.
Okay.
And so working it out with one of my counselors, we had a wonderful African American counselor. Her name was Cassandra. And she helped me to realize that I still had I had mother wounds. That was
Mhm.
probably the first time I really recognized that. And so we had a long night of processing one night, and that was the first time that I realized. And then as I got older, being a woman, I realized I could see why any woman would have any challenges at the age of between 17 and 24. And so I began to give her a little bit of grace, because I was going through my own struggle. So I could totally relate to her, you know.
I look at my parents now that I'm in my 50s and I'm like, they were just figuring things out too. Like they didn't know what they were doing. So kind of puts
Yeah,
it all in perspective.
yes, definitely, definitely. Yeah.
So were there any other traumas that happened to you growing up, or was there anything else that caused you to turn to drugs or
Yeah, I mean, abusive relationships, yeah, mainly just abandonment, and
Mhm.
always being afraid that I was going to be abandoned again.
Okay.
And that was all the way just up into the age of 20, like I said, 21, 22 when I entered treatment. Life changed totally after going into treatment and finding value in myself and wanting to stay clean and sober. I had a wonderful therapist that helped me to navigate life. I chose not to do the NA and AA route because I was very young. And if I ever did relapse, what was going to happen is I was just going to have more ways to be sick. And
Hmm.
so through my spiritual practice and through my beautiful therapist, I was able to navigate my challenges just by, talking it through. And I had this split because when I got into recovery, which was like 30 years ago, you couldn't talk about it to anybody. So if I had divulged to anybody on my job, I would have never been promoted. I wouldn't
Right.
have never made it anywhere near where I did when retired. I was administrator for in the Office of Neighborhood Safety, and I would have never got there because people would have been judging me. I watched them
They would
do
have
it to
frowned upon your
were
revelation.
frowned upon
Yep.
me. Now it's not so like that, but back then it was just like taboo. And now that I'm older, I can see many women are still struggling inside of trying to be in a space that really doesn't really work or fit for them. So about age 44, which is about 8, 9 years ago, I did a program called Landmark Worldwide, which helped me to merge the two. So for me to even be able to sit here today and tell you I use cocaine, that is huge for me because my life was so split,
Hmm.
um, with shame and guilt. I had to reconcile, like I wouldn't be where I am today or who I am today if I didn't have that lifestyle.
It's part of your story, definitely.
It's part of my story.
And I would imagine the abandonment issues manifested in relationships with men as well, I would imagine.
Yes, very much so, very much so. So I've managed, if I can't control the relationship, I usually am not in it.
Right.
And so that's something that I had to reconcile with about 8 years ago is letting go of my control of many things, not just relationships, but you know, being a codependent in other people's lives, seeing I'm also I can see things, I'm empathic, I read energy. And so I had to learn to just like, that's not just because I know it doesn't mean I have to speak on it, doesn't mean I have to be in action. It's just that I know it. And if someone comes and asks me, now I give it to you. Before I was in everybody's mix.
Oh
I
yeah.
could fix everything because I've had so many life experiences and I wanted to just give it away. I wanted everybody to be healed in the
Hmm.
way that I was healed. But at times that just can't happen.
Yeah, they're
You
not,
gotta
a lot of people aren't even ready to be healed or hear the information that you probably have to share with them.
I had to come to that conclusion. They
Mhm.
want to hear it, but they're not ready to get in action about anything to change their lives.
It's kind of like when the person is ready to hear it is when they'll go seek out the information, they'll find it on their own. Like even with having a spiritual awakening, you can share with your loved ones about it, but they're gonna look at you like you're crazy until they're ready to receive the information or find it on their own.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
So what
Yes.
led you to the mushrooms? Let's talk about the healing process that happened when you did your first round of mushrooms. How'd that
Um,
affect you, or what was that like?
So I had been working with a practitioner out of Atlanta, fabulous and grounded. And we first, as she was doing some work on me, and spirit came to her, and she shared with me about doing ayahuasca and, different modalities, modalities for healing. At that time, I wasn't ready. I was like, oh no, no,
Mm.
because my background in recovery is like, I don't want to put nothing else in my system.
Right.
Um, but I was doing some training, or I was around some people who did it, taught me, and I wanted to go off and do ayahuasca first, and my cousin was like, "No, start with the mushrooms, honey. Just start there." And that was the best thing for me because that is it's an experience. It is a total spiritual experience. I respect the mushrooms to the fullest. And so I just the right teacher had to come. The person that I had to trust. She's now my friend. Her name is Halima. And she just was the most patient and wonderful guide. And so that's what started me on my mushroom journey. And the experience was, like I said, life changing, life altering. As you see, I wear my mushroom earrings. Um, I I'm actually in a microdosing facilitation training at the moment here in the Bay
Okay.
Area with Flow State. And so I believe in the healing of mushrooms to that degree that I would really want to help somebody else facilitate the process of someone else um, learning and microdosing mushrooms.
I've done mushrooms a few times, and my brother's done them. He's had a very spiritual healing experience, but I haven't had that experience yet when I do them. So I'm wondering, maybe it's not the right environment, or maybe I'm not around the right coach, or I usually do them by myself here in the house. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, you may it could be the environment. They
Mhm.
definitely tell you do not have a spiritual journey in an environment where you're not comfortable and around people who you're not comfortable with, because the truth will come out. And then if you're in the wrong environment and you don't have anybody to process it with, it can not be such a great experience. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe
Mhm.
that's what it is. I'm pretty comfortable in my house, and I trust everybody around me. But I don't know. Maybe I just haven't been in the right mindset. Something I don't know.
Or and the mindset or the right dosage.
Maybe that's what it is. So you did it 3 times though. So how was each experience different?
Each experience was different. The first time I met my ancestors,
Okay.
and they came to me with my maternal side and my both sides actually, but the first side was my maternal side, and they told me why I was here, what I was here to do, that I was here to hold the line for my family, for the young ladies who were coming after me. Um, I tapped into some channeling of some relatives that I wasn't quite close to, but were here. Yeah, it was all about me and my family line the first time.
Mhm.
The second time was about the healing. Was it took me on a place to get down into my gut area and bring up whatever was causing me to continue to not heal so properly. So that was a healing journey. Number three was the journey where I was totally like upgraded in my process. Like life would never be the same after that journey. And the messages where you are being upgraded, old codes are deleted. Those
Mm.
were the message. That was the message that I got out of that one. So, and I've been soaring ever since
Very
and
spiritual,
exploring.
very spiritual.
Yes.
So what were you thinking is you had this event with your ancestors, with your maternal side of your family, and what was that like actually? Like, did they come to you in word? Did you see them in your imagination? What was that like?
So it was more of a presence.
Okay.
Like each person, like I didn't meet my great great grandmother came along with her sister who I knew. Um, and it was a presence I just knew. And so I'm talking to them. I believe I was speaking out loud. I can't remember what the process was, but I was like, they were like, at this particular time, this is the time that we needed to come to you to tell you what you needed to do. And I was like, well, why did you leave us with all this baggage? And they were like, this is what had to be so that you could come and you could be the relief for everybody else who was coming after you. And also relieving them too. So yeah, it was quite an experience. The channeling of the relatives that I didn't know and knowing things that happened to them that I would not have known because I don't really, I wouldn't have had no way of knowing was new. Didn't realize that I had the ability to channel. But I have a very profound insight about the young women in my family. And so
Hmm.
I have a lot more patience for a lot of them now that I know
A lot more
that we
grace.
have a lot more grace and I'm as present as they allow me to be.
Did that experience open up any other, we'll say, powers or any other gifts?
Let's see. I believe it started to unlock the ability to hear and see. I would say yes.
What do you mean?
So prior to me doing ceremonies, when any person would work with me, any psychic or any person doing body work, they'd be like, "Oh, spirit's been trying to talk to you, and you just don't pay attention."
Mhm.
I didn't have the ability at that time to sit and be still and be present enough to hear the still small voice inside of me that gives me direction. That started to open up as I started to awaken more with the medicines, with the plant medicines that helped me to be still, to listen, to have relationships with my ancestors. I have an altar now. I have an altar for myself. So it opened me up to have relationships with my ancestors.
Mhm. How do you balance so the ancestor reverence, I'll call it, instead of ancestor worship with maybe the Christian way you were brought up? Do you still consider yourself a Christian or have you kind of moved past that?
I consider myself spiritual.
Okay.
Like I believe that Jesus is a prophet. I believe that he is a brother to all of us, that he is
Hmm.
an example. I just believe that everybody has the same abilities as him. He even says it in the
He
Bible.
does. Yeah.
Done these things and you will do greater. So it's like, and that's another hard piece to let go of. I still say, in the name of Jesus, sometimes I still say, in my own power and in the power of the universe. It's just something that is with me. It just
Mhm.
doesn't, I'm just not bound to it in a way that it doesn't allow me to see what is spiritual, whole, and true.
Well, as you were explaining your story, I was thinking, um, the Bible says you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So that was kind of what was opened up through your mushroom experience, I feel like.
Yes, very much so. I like the way you said that.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, we're kind of towards the end of our time together, but I do want to ask you a couple questions, like hot seat questions that I ask all my guests. The first one is, how would you define or explain a spiritual awakening to someone? What would be your definition of what is a spiritual awakening?
Let's say a spiritual awakening is when you have been conditioned to believe a particular way, and you one day wake up to find that way of being is not true for you. and other things begin to resonate with you, and you begin to live your life in a way that is totally different from everybody else, or the way you've been conditioned. You open up to more love, more peace, more kindness. Your ego is kind of like put on a back seat. You begin to see people for who they are, the gods that they are. We all are connected to God.
Mm,
So a
I, I,
spiritual
lo-
awakening.
I love that
So
definition. I love that explanation. Next question is, what's the best lesson that you've learned in life, or what's an important lesson that you've learned in life so far?
I am enough, and that my story, my life path has made me who I am today, and that we all can heal and we all can be made whole.
Mm, that's a great answer. Our last question is, what would be your advice to someone who's beginning their spiritual awakening, or they're going through a spiritual awakening? What would you want to tell them about what they're going to experience or what it's like?
I want them to know that even though it may seem scary or they may be in fear, that you're exactly where you need to be, and that the teachers and the tribe and anybody else that needs to be there to help you along the journey will show up. You need not look for them. You need not fret. You need not be afraid. They will show up.
That is a great answer. All right, Tammy, our time's almost up, but how does somebody go about getting in contact with you, or is there a service or product you'd like to share with others?
Sure. I am a Destiny Cards reader. I read people through their birthday, through the a regular deck of cards. Each person's birthday is associated with one of the cards in the deck. My birthday is in May, and I am a six of clubs. So my card represents being the messenger and bringing other people to higher consciousness. And that is exactly what I am doing in my life. So I actually read people's life paths, these people's annual readings, and I can be reached at TLEA and TLEANDASSOCIATES.com, tleeandassociates.com for readings and consultations.
Tammy, I want to thank you for sharing your story. It's very powerful, very moving in terms of what you were able to overcome and accomplish in all your life. Good luck in everything you're out to do moving forward.
You appreciate you.